Leaders have a responsibility to help their employees be happy in life because happiness leads to productivity and profitability. It's not just about what we do in the workplace, it's about how we live our lives. If we're happy in our personal lives, we're more likely to bring our best selves to work. And if we're our best selves, we're more likely to be productive, engaged, and committed to the company's mission. These are words of today's guest, Jade Green. And what she's all about, if you haven't picked up, is really about bringing happiness to the workplace. That's right, happiness of all things to the workplace. You see, as leaders, having happy employees, happy and subordinates, enables us to unlock, as Jade's saying there, their peak performance. And that's what we're after, right? We want them to bring their best selves to the forefront for us so that we can go ahead and use that in our work life. So that is essentially the essence of today's episode. Now, you're going to hear all about why this is so important, obviously, from Jade. But just to give you a quick idea about her background, and we get into it in this interview, I should say, she started running her own 2 companies at the age of 21. So think about, if you're older than 21 and listening to this show, think about where you were and what you're doing. Now, if you're under 21 or if you are 21, is that what you imagine yourself doing at that age or will be doing at that age? Probably not, right? So it's pretty impressive. So obviously we get into the power of happiness, but we get into so many other different aspects to this episode, such as flow state and finding the balance and challenge and why that's important for success and how you can create a happy and productive work environment for your people, the significance of feeling recognized and connected in the workplace, why it's important for your organization to have a future vision, align all the departments towards that goal, and why clarity and certainty are crucial in that vision, amongst many other topics. So this one is jam-packed, and of all things we actually talk about on this podcast episode, we even get into the 5 love languages, which is going to pique your interest. Why the heck would a leadership podcast talk about the 5 love languages? Well, if you're ready, then sit back, relax, and enjoy finding out with the power of happiness from productivity to profitability with Jade Green. Welcome one, welcome all to the Peak Performance Leadership Podcast, a weekly podcast series dedicated to helping you hit peak performance across the 3 domains of leadership. Those being leading yourself, leading your team, and leading your organization. This podcast couples my 20 years of military experience as a senior Canadian Army officer with world-class guests to bring you the most complete podcast of leadership going. And for more, feel free to check out our website at movingforwardleadership.com. And with that, let's get to the show. Jade, welcome to the show. So good to have you here today.
I am really excited to be here. Thanks for having me, Scott.
So, second show in a row where I do this, but I don't normally do it. And let's kind of dive into the guest background, because normally I'm like, I don't care about how the sausage is made. I just want a sausage. Like, give me the sausage. But rather, your background, I feel like, ties into the topic of the day as I was poking around your website. So why don't you go a little bit of your background for the audience so they have an understanding who Jay Green is and where she came from and how she got to where she is today. And we'll go from there.
Okay, firstly, it is my real name because that's the first thing I usually get asked. Like, Did I change it? Was I formerly a dancer or something? No, my parents think they're hilarious. Jade Green is my real name. I am the typical story from trailer and trauma to triumph. So, yes, I grew up in one of those trailer parks until I was about 9. So, we went through all of the interesting childhood things and really learned along the way from my dad of how to not take no for an answer and to really live life to the fullest and on your own terms. So it was a really colorful background, leading to at the age of 21, thinking, you know what, small town, it's time to get out of the small town, time to get out of the caravan. I'm going to travel to the big smoke and go traveling around Australia. And I went to what we call the top end of Australia, Darwin, which, if anyone that knows Australia, that's not really the big smoke. But I thought at 21 I'd give that a crack. And that's where my real entrepreneurial career began. I fell into I fell into accidentally having two companies, one with 52 contractors at 21 years old. And I had a modeling and promotional agency and a dressmaking business, and kind of everything changed for me at that point. It's like, wow, I can literally, I can just be my own boss and do my own thing and have my own rules. And it was kind of this reinforcement of I don't need to conform to the general rules of society. From there, friend got eaten by a crocodile, decided we don't need to live in the Wild West anymore, moved to the real big smoke and the city, and fell into recruitment. And so I spent 13 years in headhunting and recruitment across all different industries, everything from the handles sold to coffin manufacturers to Google. And to show my age, I shared a serviced office with Google when I still was dialing from the yellow pages, and Google didn't even have their own offices. And that was really what formed my knowledge and background of company cultures and what makes employees happy and unhappy, why they leave, why they stay, and what we can do, what organizations do to put them into peak performance. So, utilizing all of those sort of understandings and knowledge, I got to a stage in my life that it was like midlife crisis. I'm happy, but am I really happy? I've achieved all these amazing things. I've won the awards, and I've got the best investors in town, and I drive the glitter orange sports car, and I wear the pinstripe suit like a real executive, right? Like a real successful person. But each day I was feeling unfulfilled, and it made me start to really question, what was this life really about? What do I really want? And I found that at a soul level, I'm a surfer. So I read Oprah's What I Know for Sure. And what I knew for sure was I was a surfer, and I hadn't been a surfer for 17 years. So I went and burnt all the bridges and changed all the things. And if you could see the video right now, you can see a surfboard behind me. I live at one of the world's best surfing spaces in Australia or in the world, and I no longer wear a pinstripe suit. And I went about going, what really makes me happy? What lights me up? And what really takes me to the next level? And how can I share that with other people? And how can I help businesses realize that the fate of humanity rests on the shoulders of these business leaders? And it's really our responsibility as leaders to help our humans that work for us to be happier in life. And I say it's a bait and switch, right? Because happiness is the greatest hack to productivity and profitability. So you as a leader, if you can make your people just that little bit happier in all of their life, you're going to have more productive and profitable people. So I think it's a win-win for everyone. Is that enough background?
That's fantastic. And I love the surfboard. I'm not a surfer, by the way, but I just love I love how you're just living, you know, the life you want to live. I guess the way, a little bit jealous. I will get there one day. It's coming, for sure. And I love how your mission, it just oozes out of you. And we're definitely going to talk about, your points on the how, our 7 human needs to be happy and how to be peak performing at the workplace. We're going to definitely dive into that. But you sparked my attention about 3 minutes and 28 seconds ago with something. and it would be remiss to skip over it for the audience out there, because no doubt there's some people who are in this situation. You're and to I guess to kind of set the tone is I experienced something similar, not exactly the same, but we'll get to it. But what I want to talk about is 21 years old, owner of two companies, the struggles, the trials, the tribulations go to it, and I can relate to you similarly, because at let me think here. I got to do the math. Carry to one. Blah blah blah. I was around 23 years old, and I, by background, I'm a Canadian Army officer. Still am. Still serve today. So 23, I was leading a platoon of troops. Some of which have served more time in the Army at that time than what I had been alive, but I was still in charge of them. And that platoon ended up being around 85 people. So very similar, but super young, in charge of
Yeah.
basically in charge of a lot of people. So I would love to hear your story there. But being 21, a young woman in charge of two companies, 50 odd people under her, trials, tribulations, some hard lessons learned, whatever you got from that one.
Yeah, beautiful. So I'd been blessed that I had been working at since I was 14 at that stage, or 13, 9 months when it was legal. So I'd had lots of experience of actually working in places. I'd been a short order cook, so I'd been in charge of a kitchen. So I'd had a little bit of experience having to have leadership responsibilities at school. I'd been on the student council and worked through that, and captains of football teams and things. So I'd had a little bit of leadership, but it really was an accident for me. Like, I was working in a bar one day and someone came in and said, "Do you want to work at the supercars as an umbrella girl?" And I was like, "That sounds super fun. I love cars." And she's like, "Got any friends?" I'm like, "I only just got to this town 3 days ago, but I'm pretty sure I can work the rest of this street just like you just did, and ask every other barmaid if they want to be an umbrella girl." Um, so I then took a brief from her. I was like, "Okay, what are you looking for?" And she's like, "Energy and personality, and they've got to be willing to talk, but they've got to have this sort of certain look because this is the brand that we're representing." And so I was like, "Okay, take a brief, go find the humans to match." And so that really has carried me for the last, oh, dare I say it, 24 years. Jesus Christ. Let's not put that on air. Take that one off. Right. But taking a brief, what is the brief? What is the person we need? What's the avatar of the person that's going to be the right fit for this duty that you need them to perform? And then going out and screening and finding the right fit and building relationships. And what I found was this was also my biggest downfall in that business. I built it on reputation, and I built my team on me. And so when it came to me deciding I was going to leave that town and that state, I went to sell the business. Well, I got approached for someone to buy the business, and I was like, "Oh, this sounds awesome." But then I spoke to my team, and I was like, "Will you work for this person that wants to buy it?" Because I didn't have them locked in on hard contracts because they were contractors, and they were all like, "No, we work for you. And so if it's not you, then we might go to this other agency that was a competitor because they'd been trying to headhunt them and trying to poach them for years at a time, and they already had a reputation, and they were going to transition some of my other clients. So they were like, "No, our loyalty lies with you." So that was a big lesson for me, moving into other organizations and thinking about how do we, when I was running other companies that other people owned, like, how do we de-risk the organization so it doesn't just linchpin on them working for one manager, right? It's a great strength to have for an organization as well. Like, we often hear people don't leave companies, they leave leaders. But how do you build stronger bonds that isn't just hinged on one predominant person, so that if that person moves on, the business still stays strong and you don't hemorrhage your people?
It's interesting. When I started all this over 5 years ago, it was during the whole Chris Ducker, sorry, um, Upreneur rage, where everyone had their website with their name, right? Like,
Mhm.
everyone, and it still goes on a bit today, but I didn't do that. I own the domain, still have it, but I didn't do it. And I got asked that one time. They're like, "Well, why is this not Scott McCarthy, leadership or whatever?" I'm like, "Well, because this is how it is. If you are, as you said, the linchpin, if you're the main reason that everyone sticks around, if you are it, well, one of the big things in leading is leaving. We all stay. We all leave at some point.
Mm.
So sure, I could have made it Scott McCarthy, but the day I decided, because it will happen, this is done. I'm tapping out, folks. I'm calling it quits and packing my bags and go and try to surfboard. Maybe I'll get some lessons from Jade
Yay!
down down in Australia. But the day that happens, everything that I had spent all this time creating goes up in smoke
Yeah.
because it is all hinged on me, and that's not is not a principle of leadership that I embrace. So that's why the business is called Moving Forward Leadership, because it's all about progressing and moving forward. And then of course the podcast here is Peak Performance, because we want to achieve peak performance and move forward with it. So it kind of goes hand in hand. So it's a bit of a story there of how it's very similar. We have parallels going on here.
Yeah, I love that. You would have, I think you saw one of my landing pages, which is my speaker page, which is in my name, so jadegreen.com.au. But that's just for me as a speaker. Our company is Vare Effect. And for the similar reason, right? I don't want clients to think they're only getting me either. Like it is something that's bigger than us. I find that I don't know. I think it's weird for employees to really buy into working for somebody else's name, and I think it doesn't give as much ownership and camaraderie and loyalty to a brand when it's somebody's name. It kind of seems a bit, I don't know, ego. So we use it for the speaking, but definitely for the consulting and for the work that we do, it's a team, and the team love wearing their company shirts and having their company water bottles with the logo, and it means something to them. And there's a story behind that as well, and it's its own entity. And I love that everyone that works in the team can make it their own, and they're like, why do they love it, and how do they embody that for them rather than trying to emulate and be a mini me.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. Absolutely. Now, you talk a lot about the 7 needs for peak performing employees. So let's dive into that, because I can feel how you ooze that out, and two, no doubt your company embraces obviously that whole ideology. So can we dive into those, and like, one, what are they, and two, how do they actually achieve the effect of peak performing? Because obviously I'm very interested in peak performance. And here at the podcast, so just to give you an idea, or actually here, Moving Forward Leadership Complete, I focus on what I call my 3 domains in leadership. And that is, one, leading yourself, i.e., you, the leader, and how you achieve peak performance, how you continuously try to grow, how you take care of even your health, mental health, so on and so forth, all those things. Two, how do you leading your team, i.e., how you take care of the individuals within the team. So the Scotts, the Jades, the Janes, the Joes, etc. And then finally, the third domain is leading your organization, i.e., the institution. So for me, it's Moving Forward Leadership. So how do I lead that? How do I make that grow? How do I make that better, more efficient, more effective, so on and so forth? So if we look at it through that context, we're really focusing on the individuals leading your team, but of course, no doubt yourself is involved in there too.
Mhm.
So I would love to know how these 7 really help us achieve those levels.
Yeah, amazing. So I found over the last 2 and a bit decades, looking at and studying culture and studying human behavior. And I do a lot of work. I study under the Flow Research Collective and do high flow leadership to really look at how do we unlock peak performance, not only in ourselves, but in our team members and anyone else around us as well. And I was really leaning on Maslow's hierarchy for a lot of the psychology behind behind behavior of people. And then I was leaning on Tony Robbins' human needs as well. I was like, okay, cool. There's a kind of it's all there and thereabouts. But if I look at the organizations I've worked with, I look at the cultures that I've helped to build and the ones that we've studied that I really want to emulate. I go, what is it? What is it that really makes a difference? How do we really unlock the potential of our people and ourselves? And I always say, I always reference Ben Horowitz's book, What You Do Is Who You Are, because if you are not it as the leader, if you are not embodying everything you want to see in your team, then it's like, doesn't matter what words on a wall that you have in terms of your vision, mission, values. If you're not, the leaders are not embodying it, then your people are not going to reflect it. So everything I talk about starts with you individually first, but we'll talk today about how a leader can put that into their team. So if we go, you've touched on a few of these things, the foundational levels. There's like a big talk out there at the moment about psychological safety, right? If we think about the well-being, so my core foundational bottom of the pyramid, as you would say, 7 human need for peak performance employees is well-being. And that firstly starts with psychological safety and mental well-being. Because think of this, if you have like your cognitive load is being chewed up about how you're going to pay rent, how you're going to feed your kids, like the fight that you've just had with your partner, the something that's going on bad with your children, all of those things that are going on outside, how can you be fully focused inside? Like the thought process of being able to slam down the roller door of disassociation the minute you punch the clock and walk in and sit at your industrialized desk, days are done, right? That's just not how we get peak performance employees, because we are not machines and we're not doing just machine work now. We need to be able to bring our brains online and use our cognitive resources to problem solve. And we can't do that to the best of our ability when our brains are run off into the past, depressing or ruminating on what was, or fast forwarding around anxiety about what's going to happen at the end of the day or in the future, or how I'm going to do this, that, and the other thing. So if we can work with people on their mental well-being and their psychological safety, that is like the foundation. But also think of this, energy, right? If we're unwell, full of dis-ease, like it's not easy to move our frames around and we've got pain and it's awkward, or we're big or lethargic, and do you know what I mean? If we don't have the well-being physically, how can we perform mentally? How can we do the best of our job when that's chewing up our energy stores and our resources and stopping us from being able to shine? Or, you're constantly taking medication that might be dulling you down, or do you know what I mean? The food that you're consuming is making you sleepy. Like you go and eat a bunch of garbage at lunchtime, and the thing that gets me with running seminars and that, and I go to people's seminars and everyone was really sleepy after lunch. It's like, you fed them bacon carbonara and fries and like fried food and soda, and they peaked and then they crashed. Like, what did you expect? Right? So really looking at the well-being of our people, if you can get that foundation right, you're helping them to be able to step up with full focus and full energy. Right? The next thing is connection. As human beings, we're wired for social connection. That's what makes us human, right? That's what brings us to life. Even the introverts need connection. Uh-huh. They just need more help doing it, and they need to be met on their level. So we know the studies are showing that people that feel like they have a friend-like relationship at work, or a best work friend, they're 7 times more engaged and they stay 7 times longer. Imagine what that does for you as a leader, for the performance of your team, if you don't have retention problems and people are engaged and doing better work, right? You don't want to let down the people next to you. This also layers into the psychological safety as well, because when you have true connection and you feel safe to be able to share or to ask questions, your problem solving and your ability to unlock is far greater.
This is. Can I jump in for a minute?
Yeah, I was like,
first.
I don't want to keep talking.
No. I didn't want to interrupt you actually until it was a good point. This is actually very timely. So I run a mastermind community called the Leader Growth Mastermind. We get together weekly. I provide them content each week, and each month we focus on a theme of one of those 3 domains. So this month, currently, we're focusing on leading your teams, and we're talking about creating peak performing teams. And this is not a lie. I'll bring it up on my screen and show you if I need to, if you don't believe me. But literally, the first 2 weeks of this month, what were we talking about? Psychological safety.
Ah, it's a trending topic, right?
Right. And that was so that's based off the work of Tim Clark. And for the listener out there, if you want to check out that episode, just go to lead.boss.com/128. That interview is there. But it's all about Tim Clark's 4 stages: inclusion, inclusion, safety, being able to be feeling included, kind of what you've already talked about. Next one is let me make sure I get 2 and 3 mixed up. Next one is learner. Oh yeah. Next one is learner safety, so be able to make mistakes. Yep. After that is to I can't remember the exact term he puts it, but basically provide input into safe to be able to input. And then the final one is feedback and stuff like this. And then the final one is the challenge. So not just beyond just say, hey, here's ideas, but rather, hey, this is messed up. We're doing things wrong, so on and so forth. So I'm hearing a very similar theme from you so far, and it's great because you mentioned connection. And I was like thinking, we literally in a group chat after one of our group calls, we were chatting, and when he was like, "This is a tribe," it's like I feel like I finally found my tribe. I was like, oh, maybe my it was like, oh, my heart just blew up. But it's great. It's just like it all just kind of flows together. So really, really enjoyed it. So first off, we got wellness. I liked what you talked about there. And then we got connection. Let's carry on with the next 2, I guess.
So the next one, clarity and certainty, is number 3. So I lean a lot on Brené Brown for this in terms of being clear is kind, being unclear is unkind. And really, if we want people to be peak performance, this for any peak performance, like even athletes, we need to have the boundaries and the bumpers. We need to know what the rules of the game are. When we know and we feel safe and certain of what we're aiming for, we know how we can step forward, or we know what questions we need to ask to be able to get there, right? But also this comes down to if there's have you heard of the term VUCA? Volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, right? When
I'm military, girl. We use it all the time.
Excellent. Right? So if there's too much VUCA, how can anyone feel safe? How can anyone do the right thing? Right? So giving them clarity and certainty allows them to be safe. Ben, going back to the psychological safety, but it also gives them the parameters of what we're working towards in terms of projects. If you can really paint what done looks like, and give them clarity and certainty of that, this is where we're going, you don't need to give the micromanaging steps. You can allow your people to go and problem solve because they know the direction that they're going without kind of guessing. So clarity and certainty. The next one is significance.
Can I jump in for a second there?
Sure.
Clarity and certainty. What you talked about there, that's what we refer to as desired end state. Where do you want to end up in the end, right? When we talk about mission planning and all that stuff, we use the term desired end state. So what is now? That being said, if you think about those words, desired end state, it doesn't mean exactly that too, right? Because guess what? As we say in the military, the enemy gets a vote. Now, your enemy could be market conditions, it could be the weather, it could be, it could be the internet, it could be anything, right? It can be, or it can be a competitor, right? But that is what you desire. So along the way, you need to make those micro adjustments to get towards as close as possible you get to that desired end state. But what I like what you said though is you give your team that desired end state. This is where I want us to end up. And then oh, okay. From my standpoint, I need to do this, that, this here, and I need to have that achieved by then. And your other team member goes, yeah, you need to achieve that by then. So I can go ahead and take it from here and move it there and do this and sprinkle on this on top of it. And all of a sudden they're oh, okay, we're at the desired end state. What the boss wanted from us.
Yeah,
So,
it really allows the teams to collaborate better together,
hmm
especially with doing handoffs with projects and knowing like things like clarity over when do you need this particular part done by, this milestone, this handoff, and who's responsible for what. Like, okay, this is going to sit in your responsibility, this is going to sit in my responsibility, this is where the handoff point is. When we have that mapped out for people, it just makes everything flow so much easier, and it gives people the right level of accountability and enrollment over how they push something forward as well.
awesome. Love it. Okay, play.
Significance, right? So this is leaning on all the human needs that everyone puts out, but significance. Now, it's really easy to, if we talk retention for employees, it's really easy to leave a job if you don't feel like your job really matters or that you don't matter to the team. Like, it's pretty easy. Like, when I feel, I don't know if you've ever been in a spot, like when I was working for an organization, there, I stayed a bit longer than I probably wanted to because I knew my team needed me. I knew if I left that I was going to be letting down my team. I knew that the projects that we were working on would fall behind if I wasn't there because I was so invested in it. And so I stayed, right? I felt significance. I felt the usual powers for good, not evil, people. But I, do you know what I mean? I felt like I would be doing a disservice because my role was significant, who I was significant to pushing this mission forward, right? So if you just look at it from a retention point of view. But again, if you want to unlock people's performance, if you look at what we just talked about with whose role is what, if you know that the thing you're working on plays a significant piece in pushing that project forward, you're way less likely to drop the ball on it, right? You're more engaged in it. You've got more pride in it. So how do you give significance? One of the really easy things I think you can do is just catch people doing the right thing, because what gets recognized gets repeated, and just build a habit as a leader of going, hey, do you know what? By you getting that to me a day earlier really helped the team. Or by you doing this, it really pushed the project forward. By you just adding your energy in a meeting, like because you come in smiling, that just raises the energy for everyone else. I just love that you do that for us. Thank you.
Do you ever feel alone, lost, or you're just not good enough as a leader? You know what? You're not alone. Many of us struggle with those feelings, especially when we're new to leadership or facing new challenges in our roles. But you don't have to go alone. It's where our Leader Growth Mastermind comes in. Our community is specifically designed for leaders who are looking to grow, develop, and most importantly, thrive. Our weekly curated content, group coaching calls, and a safe and supportive community is where you can connect with other leaders who are facing similar challenges. Whether you're dealing with imposter syndrome, feeling overwhelmed by the demands of leadership, or simply looking to connect with a community of like-minded individuals, the Leader Growth Mastermind is here to support you. So why not join us? Take that first step in becoming the leader you're meant to be. Visit lead.boss.com/mastermind to learn more and sign up and join our community today. Together, we can grow, learn, and achieve our full potential as leaders. And again, that is lead.boss.com/mastermind. Can't wait to see you there. And now, back to the show. I spent 2 years as a squadron commander. So I was in basically, think of a CEO of a 200-person company. And most Fridays, me and my right-hand man, we would what we call walk the lines, i.e. get out of our offices and go see the people on the ground level, pretty much literally. We were spread out across 9 buildings. So we were across the base. We had people everywhere. And I spent most of the time talking to people and seeing what they're up to. But I would put things relate to what their job was in terms of the overarching mission that we're achieving. Because it's super easy for someone who's simply, taking of boxes of supplies that come in, for them to go like, well, whatever, just, stock taking.
Yeah.
Okay. No, like this is super crucial equipment that, that is needed to do this, that, the other thing. It goes up, it's supporting these other units that are going to go ahead and go overseas and do these other missions, so on and so forth. So I literally took so much of my time. So for people to understand that their job was significant, it mattered. And probably one of the biggest ones that I did was that with our contracting cell, one year I grabbed all of our numbers and I said, like, what was the value of the contracts that we did this past year?
Mm.
And, and people are like, why the hell do you want to know that? So just tell me. I'm like, get the numbers for me. I want to know how many contracts did we go ahead and get finalized? What was the total value of it? Like, and they're like, God, the boss's office rocker. So I got the number, and before Christmas break, we had everyone together, and I was talking. And I started running off all the key KPIs that all the different sections did. I had transport people. So how many kilometers did they do the past year? What did that equate to? Our maintenance guys, how much equipment did they fix? What did that equate to? And I said, for the contracts guys, I said, you did, I forget how much, millions of dollars worth of contracts. X millions of dollars worth of contracts. That equates to Y number family incomes in the local area.
Yes.
Right. So adding that significance immediately to, just them, as far as they're concerned, just kind of churning paper per se. So that's why I and people came up to me and like, wow, I never looked at it that way before. I'm like, well, this is what you do.
This is the difference you make.
Yep. 100%.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. So if we move on to number 5, you touched on this a second ago, challenge, right? If we look at peak performers, any peak performers, no one is a peak performer that doesn't like a bit of challenge, right? If we don't have challenge, we get bored. We check out, we go complacent, we get beige and we bounce, right? It's about how do we keep them engaged. Do you have you studied flow much at all, Scott? Do you know any of the
Oh yeah,
science behind flow state?
a
Okay.
bit. I wouldn't say I know a lot, but I know a bit. Yeah, for sure.
I'm going to say we get 2 gold stars in a beer if you can tell me the percentage of for the challenge skills ratio that unlocks flow state.
Oh, 68 comes to my head, but I can't remember. I don't.
Everybody thinks it's a really high number. Guess what?
No.
It's
low?
an itty bitty teeny weeny 4%.
Oh, okay.
To
off.
unlock flow state, it's a 4% challenge to skills ratio. If it's too big a challenge, we can grind and we kind of get there, but it's a lot harder and it takes a lot longer, right? Because we can get into fear and procrastination and questioning and overthinking, and you don't get in that zone of like where the ego melts. Like the flow state is when we're at one, right, with consciousness, and we're in the zone, and everything like times either slowing down or speeding up depending on what suits us in that moment to get into that sweet spot. And we can't do that if we're too concerned about whether we've got the right skills. Like our ego kicks in and we're kind of like starting to rationalize and freak out. So it's a real challenge for leaders to figure out what's the 4%. And the way you do it, you're like, no, but I need them like over a 6-month project. Like this challenge is massive. We just need it to be 4% stacking, whether that's every task or every project or every day, every hour, right? Every flow block. Like break it, if you can break the tasks down and just challenge that just enough and then we stack each of those. Like you've heard about like the 1% increments of, like if we can just change things and stack them 1%. So if we dial that up to 4, we hit the flow state. And it's about how do we chunk down tasks into those levels so that we can get that right sweet spot. Because we know in flow, the studies by who was it? By McKinsey, I think it was, or Gallup. I can get that for us. Is that it's a 500% increase in productivity. and performance when we're in flow. So think about that. Like, think about what that can do for your team if you can get that right. The challenge is when we go too far and we overload our people, they go into overwhelm, they cognitive freak out and they shut down, or they don't feel like they're able to make the right decisions and it's not coming from the right energy. If we don't give them enough challenge, they get bored, they get complacent, they check out and they bounce. So challenges is one I really love, and it's one of the things that I study the most around finding that how do we get this balance and how do we break up those projects and paint what done looks like into milestones so that we can do that. Because we know when we win, like, and you break it down and you win, that momentum of ticking something off and getting to the next stage helps keep us going that forward and going faster.
Yeah, I remember the 500 number. Obviously, I didn't remember the 4%. I must be thinking of something else. But it's interesting, though. It kind of goes back to what I was talking about earlier, but in a little bit of a different lens. In that you really need to know your people, because 4% for me is different than 4% to you.
Yeah.
That's different than 4% to Jim and 4% to Jane. So that is the challenge, per se, mind the pun, of challenging people, right? Is that you got to really understand at what point do they actually feel the overwhelm, what point do they feel the underwhelm, and try to
Yeah.
gauge their kind of range, per se. But I love the whole ideology, breaking big problems down into small problems. I preach that all the time. We do it all the time. It's literally ingrained into us in military culture, because that's how we operate. So we just take a really big problem, we literally break it down into very small
What's the
problems
first
and
step?
kind of,
What's the next step?
yeah,
Yeah.
start hammering at hammering at them. So no, I really like it for sure.
Awesome.
All right, let's
So
move
let's talk
on.
about number 6, future vision. We know that if we run out of future, we run out of hope, right? If we're not pulled forward by something that's like in the future, then we just get stuck and we get complacent, or we get stuck thinking about the past. So there's two things I talk about with future vision. And if you really want to unlock the potential of your team, this again goes back to knowing them individually. When you can help coach them on something that's important to them in their lives, you're going to turn up the dial of intrinsic motivation, right? So when you can link how what they do every day at work helps them be better in their own lives as well, that's where you really take things to the next level. And for some people, it's just realizing that, hey, this paycheck is going to help you to pay off your house. And if you do this, then maybe your bonus, what do you want to do with it? But maybe you're coaching them on their financial management and how to budget, or how, like, the knowledge that you have over getting a home loan or reducing debt or something. And then you can link that to what they do. But your coaching is helping them to achieve that future vision as well. Then you've got them more bought in, because again, significance, you are showing to them that they as a human and their true happiness is actually significant as well. Like, and it means something to you. We need to have a common future vision for the team, because they need to know what the North Star is that they're working towards. How many leadership teams have you come into, and the company's got a mission, but division over here thinks they're working towards one thing. I had this not long ago. One team thought that they were responsible for, like, it was just for driving revenue. And so all of the marketing efforts was around driving revenue. I'm like, cool, but by driving more revenue, we're actually causing more trouble, because we don't have the boots on the ground to actually service the customers. And now we've got unhappy customers, and we're causing a bigger problem. We don't have enough staff. We're putting all the other stuff under pressure, and we're burning them out. And then I went to the owner. I was like, what are we really trying to do here? And he's like, I need the profit level to increase to here. I need this level of GP so that I can fund the next location that we need to open. I'm like, right. So it's not revenue. I need cash in the bank for you. Yeah. Excellent. Everyone back in the room. What do we need to do to increase profitability? Oh, actually, we don't need to be hiring more people. Oh, we don't need to be pushing more traffic through the door. What we need to be doing is increasing every cart and every sale. What can we do with that? How can we do that? Completely changes the whole marketing campaigns and everything that they were doing towards a different metric, right? So we need to get really, again, it comes back to clarity and certainty though, but they need to know what that future vision is so they can all get rowing in the right direction. Otherwise, you've got some people rowing over here and some people rowing over there and some people rowing backwards, right? But when they feel like they can, and again, all of the things stack, right? When they know that what they do matters to helping push that future vision forward, that's driving their motivation as well. They're pulled forward by that.
Yeah, I definitely, it kind of goes back again to what I said earlier, but desired end state, again, that's that future vision. Okay, where do we want to end up?
Yeah.
I enjoyed your example just then because I had a very similar experience. Imagine that. I had a one-on-one coaching client. He was a vice president of sales for his corporation, and he had this number. He had the number. He had the drive for the number. They weren't necessarily getting the number, and it was a really wonky. I was trying to wrap my head. I'm like, right, but you're sales. I got it, and it's a software company, so the developers were in charge of the actual product. I'm like, okay, so you hook the client, developers come in to showcase it, and then you guys finalize it. And he's like, yep. And it's like, okay, cool. And then the operations folks are the ones who actually implement and manage it, and day to day. I'm like, great. Long story short, it took us a while to figure this out, but long story short, do you know what would have happened if he had met his number? The operations team would have crashed, literally crashed, because they could not handle the amount of throughput
Yeah.
that equated to the sales goal that the company was pushing on him. I'm like, this is what I refer to as misalignment. The company's not aligned, right? It needs to be aligned. Like if you go meet your goal of sales, the operations guys need to be able to handle that, because if not,
Yep.
well, you're going to lose all your sales in
Can't
the end
deliver.
anyway, because you're going to have,
Yeah.
right? You can't deliver on your promise, and your customers are going to go elsewhere. And oh, by the way, your R&D, your developers need to be the glue between both of you, because your sales guys are going to be telling you features that your customers want, or saying, oh, this is lacking, or this is good, or I really like this. You want to double down / pick up. The operations guy are like, well, this is what's actually being used, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So they need to be the glue between the two, but none of that was happening. Each one of them were kind of in their silos, stovepipes, looking, at their own areas. And I was like, you got to bring this up to your CEO, man. Like, you have to push this, because no matter what, like, stop focusing on your number, because it will kill. If you achieve what you're told to achieve, it will be the death of your company.
Yeah.
It's like,
And this
oh,
is how we see really successful businesses go under. I had a client a couple of years ago, and they were doubling every month, doubling revenue, doubling. And but it was in an area that really struggled to get talent because it was in a remote area, not a lot of talent pool. The problem also being that you couldn't even get any rentals in. So even if you were enticing people to move in from interstate, they had nowhere to live. So they couldn't actually even take the job. So you could sell the dream as like, guys, we need to stop. And then we're getting a bad reputation because the delivery is not there. Customers are unhappy. The reputation's getting burnt. It's like, you need to stop and look at how you're going to structure this, and why is this an ego number again? And it came back to, for that, it was just, someone had got attached to, they were a salesperson, constantly, like by nature, getting the numbers and the ego of double and double and double, and with this size, and had lost the long-term vision and the profitability and really how you sustain it. And it meant that they imploded for a while, and that's why we came in and had to restructure everything. And now they're building from a sustainable base, and they're making more money out of less delivery.
awesome. Your final one you have here of the 7.
Yes.
Happiness.
Happiness. Yes.
Happiness has no place in the workplace. Come on.
I know. I actually had an old
Right?
client that I dropped like a hot cake, said, I pay them to work, not be happy. And I'm like, oh, you're missing everything, right? So I talk about like the state of happiness. If you think of the state of happiness, how can you be happy when you're off in the past ruminating about things that were, even like you're over here worrying, or again anxiety land, rushed off into the future? You're not present here in the now. Happiness is the state of being here now, content. When you're present and you're focused, like when you're present and you're happy, you can be focused on the task at hand. When you have that energy of happiness, you can be your fullest self. You can bring that energy. You feel safe, and happiness spreads, and the radiation of that energy, it goes out to everybody else, right? So all of these things stack to making happier humans, happier employees. This is why happiness is the greatest hack to productivity and profitability. And there's a study by the University of Warwick that happy employees, the state ones that state they are happy, are 12% more productive than their unhappy counterparts, right? And we also know from the studies that that starts to radiate and spread to the other people, right? Then happiness starts to link to engagement. And then when we start unlocking the numbers of engagement, we're seeing like exponential growth within the team's productivity and profitability. So I call it the bait and switch in terms of, I just want to make humans be happier, because I've interviewed so many people from being a headhunter and recruiter of what the effects of unhappy employees have on their family, on their lives, that cause divorces, that cause like problems with their kids, and unhealthy bodies and beings, and mental health from being severely unhappy at work. So it feels like my calling to do something about that. But the benefit to the leaders is, when you get your people in that state, then they can be focused, they can be present, they can do their best work, they're completely unlocked to use all of their faculties and resources to push your mission forward. I get real excited about that. Sorry.
So it's funny you mentioned the statistic, 12% more productive. I was like, instant. I was like, that seems low. But then you said, engagement, like, oh, here we go. And then, exponentially higher. I'm like, yeah, okay, that makes a lot more sense now. So with that,
So,
with
so
your work,
think about every single person on your team
yeah.
being 12% more productive every single day,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
and stacking and stacking and stacking.
Yeah.
We say that the engaged employees are 23% higher profitability. If you have a team of 100 people that are 23% more profitable per person, what does that do to your bottom line?
Oh, yeah.
When we take that number and we go 80%, 87% less likely to leave, what does it do to your your brain, not having to replace with your retention, but your long-term profitability and your reputation with clients, if your people are 87% less likely to leave you?
Yeah. No, your bottom line definitely skyrockets for sure.
Yep.
Absolutely. As you were talking about, I have a mastermind member in my mind who's going through a certain situation with one of their team members, and I was just like, but her boss, the company owner, isn't letting her deal with it per se, and I was just like, these numbers absolutely make sense for this situation, and unfortunately in the inverse way. So
Yeah. The
hopefully
thing is, they got to
she's
look
going to.
at, you go, what's the opportunity cost? What's the cost? Like,
Yeah.
hypothetically, you give someone a few days to deal with something, you coach them through it, and you lose a couple of days, maybe you lose a week. I challenge people to think about, what if you lose that person? How long does it
Exactly.
take you to recruit it, to train it, to upskill? What impact do they, like, what's their relationships with the rest of the team? What's the impact with the clients, if they're dealing with clients? What's it really going to cost you? Is it going to cost you the 5 days of downtime? It's most likely going to cost you 3 to 6 months before you've got someone back up to the same level. So can you really afford to not work on this?
Yeah. Question for you along the lines of happiness. What are some of the tactics that you've seen or you advise leaders that they're to implement to increase happiness within their teams if it's so important?
So where people go wrong, they think, we'll put in a ping pong table and a couple of bean bags and we'll have pizza and beer night. Especially if you've got a team of introverts. None of them want any of that shit and they're just gonna, oops, sugar. They don't want to participate in that. Do you know what I mean? Or if they've got families, like this is not meeting them where they're at. You do need to know your people and you've got to meet them where they're at. If you just look at the foundations of those things that we talked about, like one of the main things that underpins all of that is communication. Start with communicating. Start with connecting with who they are as a real human. So I don't have them on my desk right now, but this is another deck by Best Self Company. Sometimes I use this one. But we use icebreaker cards or we use any conversation starter to start any meeting, especially one-on-ones. And we just get people to share and share back as a leader. Start to get to know the real human, to build that connection, to build that safety, to understand what their motivators are. Think about how you can layer in some of this stuff like, okay, how do we actually reduce stress? How can we maybe redesign the way that we work? Like everyone was like, people used to like, oh, we don't want people working from home. They'll never do any work. Then we had the pandemic and everyone started working from home and all of a sudden productivity spiked. And then we're forcing people to go back and productivity's dropped. Or they're still working from home, but now they're disconnected because it's gone too long, right? You need to look at how, like if you want true happiness, look at how you can just look after the well-being of your people and create that connection. It's so easy. Conversations. It doesn't cost anything. It takes a bit of your time and genuine care. And then just coach your people.
The power of questions. Hey, what would make you guys happy? What would you like? What would you like to celebrate this win?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So
Amazing.
I say the quality of your life is a direct reflection of the quality of the questions you ask. Ask yourself and ask of others, right? If you want to take that to another level, if you understood the 5 love languages and what the love language of your actual team members are, then you can show them your gratitude. You can help them celebrate their wins in a language that they receive and are like the salesperson that you think should be motivated by the big commission check, but they're not, that like you don't understand. Why are they not, like they can make so much money? But actually gifts is not their number one language. It's not their driver. Significance is, and actually physical touch and walking up and patting them on the actual back, giving them a real pat on the back and telling them what a great job they did could send them soaring and working overtime to get that pat on the back again. Again, use your powers for good, not evil. But meet our people where they're at. But you don't know this if you don't connect with them. This is where I see leaders complaining, like, I give them all this stuff. We give them great bonuses. No one's grateful. Like, we give them these prizes. Well, if gifts is not their love language, they don't care. Maybe they just want you to have a coffee with them because quality time is more important. And then you're going to get more buy-in.
I did not expect that we would go down the route of the 5 love languages in this show today. I will tell you, this is the first time I've really been honest. Yeah, definitely the first time in the history of this podcast. 262 episodes plus all the other original individual ones I've recorded myself. So probably into the 400s now. I've never talked about the 5 love languages. So
don't make me go
congratulations.
Down that rabbit hole.
Yeah. No, it's great, but it makes sense. It's all about understanding your people, meeting them where they're at, and appreciating them how they want to be appreciated, not how you think they ought to be.
Yes.
That's
This is why we see rewards and recognition programs fall flat on their face, because we didn't meet our people where they're at.
Right? It's not rocket science. Jade, this has been a fantastic conversation. I knew it was going to be a good one as soon as I got pitched to, and you definitely did not disappoint today. So lots of fun, amazing, all kinds of amazing information. Probably have to be a re-listen for the audience, but all good things come to an end. Before we hit stop here, I got 2 last questions for you. First being, question I ask all the guests here at the Peak Performance Leadership Podcast. And that is, according to you, Jade Green, what makes a great leader?
Oh, wonderful. I would say the words that are coming to mind is genuine care. And that's around that connection piece. They actually take the time to connect and see the human in their human resources.
That's a great answer for sure. Final question of the show. How can people find you, follow you, be part of your journey? Shameless plug. Have at it.
Shameless plug. You can find me on all social media. My handle on all social media is at Jade Green AU, meaning Jade Green from Australia. So at Jade Green AU, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, all the things. And my speaker page, jadegreen.com.au.
For the listener, you know what? Don't even worry about it. Just go to leaddon'tboss.com/262, and the links are there in the description for this show. So again, thank you for taking time. Thank you for torturing me with the view behind you this past hour.
I should step out. Hold on.
Yeah, I've just been looking at, she's panning the camera now.
I'm panning the camera to one of the world's best surf spots. Yeah.
There we go. I'm not a surfer. However, I grew up on an island. The water is close to my soul. So it's been fantastic. But surfboard in the background is definitely a nice touch. I enjoy it. So, but thank you, Jade.
It's actually got my podcast logo on it too. Awesome. Thanks, Scott.
And that's a wrap for this episode, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting the Peak Performance Leadership Podcast. But you know what you could do to truly support the podcast? And no, that's not leaving a rating and review. It's simply helping a friend. And that is helping a friend by sharing this episode with them if you think this would resonate with them and help them elevate their performance level, whether that's within themselves, their teams, or their organization. So do that. Help me, help a friend. Win-win all around. And hey, you look like a great friend at the same time. So just hit that little share button on your app, and then feel free to fire this episode to anyone that you feel would benefit from it. Finally, there's always more. There's always more lessons around being the highest performing leader that you can possibly be, whether that's for yourself, your team, or your organization. So why don't you subscribe? Subscribe to the show via movingforwardleadership.com/subscribe. And until next time, lead, don't boss, and thanks for coming out. Take care now.